Hey everybody, so we're here talking about the Bible, things you didn't know, things you maybe haven't learned, things that you as a Christian should be well aware of and probably aren't. And I'm going to probably blow your mind today, and I hope I do. And I'm not even going to dance around it. I'm just going to get into it. And it is this: there's no apple in the Garden of Eden. In fact, there's no fruit in the Garden of Eden. Well, that's not true. There's fruit trees. There's lots of trees in the garden, many trees in the garden, but there's no apple. And so what I want to do is go to Genesis 3. Go to Genesis 3. Now the serpent, and this is page 2, guys. Now the serpent was more subtle than any beast of the field, which the Lord God had made. Now, if you go in the Bible anywhere, serpent is just one of the names for Satan. Okay? The serpent, the devil, like that's in Revelation. There's like 12 different places that's documented that the serpent is one of his names. And if you didn't know, well, let me get not ahead of myself. So, and he said unto the woman, again, what animals do you know that can talk? With the one exception of the donkey in here, the animals aren't talking. Okay? So Satan and Eve are having a conversation. Okay, and we'll talk about why. I can tell you that's true. He said unto the woman, yeah, hath God said ye shall not eat of every tree in the garden? He knows that that's what God said. And the woman said unto the serpent, we may eat of the fruit of the trees of the garden, right? We can eat of the fruit of the trees of the garden. We can eat of the fruit trees, but of the fruit of the tree which is in the midst of the garden. Look at that distinction right there, guys. Let's close read it. We can eat of the fruit trees in the garden. So any of the trees that are for food, but what is in the midst of the garden. Now, if you know the word the midst of, it means something that can roam about, something that can move. In the midst of something means that it's transitory. People can do that. Trees cannot walk. People can. People can. And Job tells us that like Satan's always roaming about. So God hath said, ye shall not eat of it, neither shall ye touch it, lest ye die. Right? The language here. Eat of it and touch it. Now, I'm going to get crass with you, and I don't feel bad about it. You ever hear somebody say, like, eat a dick or eat pussy? Right. There are ways to eat the human body. Not actually eat, but eat of, partake of, touch the body, right? Now we got to get good here because basically the commandment that God told Adam and Eve was don't touch or talk to Satan in the garden. You see him around, he's here, don't talk to him. That is what happened. Get ready, guys. You're not ready for this. I know you're not ready for this, but we're going to do it anyway. And the serpent said unto the woman, you surely shall not die. That's a lie. I'll talk about why that is. For God does know that in the day ye eat thereof, you partake of, then your eyes shall be opened, and ye shall be as the gods, knowing good and evil. Now, first off, he is the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Satan is the tree of the knowledge of good and evil because he's the only one who knows evil because he's the father of it. So anytime you have evil discussed in the Bible, it has to root back to Satan. It has to. So when he says, when you partake of this fruit, basically when you have sex with me, yeah, I know, then your eyes are going to be opened. Of course they are. After you have sex, you can't go back to not having sex. So yeah, of course you lose your innocence. Your eyes are open because you lose your innocence. Sex is like the one act that once you do it, you can't go back and you learn a new thing. Anybody who's watching who's lost their virginity, you know what I'm talking about. And so when the woman saw that the tree was good for food and that it was pleasant to the eyes and a tree to desire to make one wise, she took of the fruit thereof and did eat and gave also unto her husband with her, and he did eat. What just happened? Clue in with me here, guys. What just happened? First act of homosexuality begins in the garden. Adam and Satan are fucking. Yeah, I know. It's tough, right? And you're like, no way, Michelina, no way. You're absolutely wrong. Okay, well, let's keep going. Hey, maybe I am wrong. Let's keep going. Okay, it's all in chapter 3. This is just one little chapter. Let's keep going. All right, cool. So the eyes of them were both. Listen, this is Genesis 3:7. This is page 3 of the Bible. And the eyes of them both were opened, and they knew that they were naked, and they sewed fig leaves together and made themselves aprons. What apple are you eating that makes you aware that you are naked? What act exists in life that makes you aware of your own nudity? There's only one. They just did it. They had sex with Satan. They both did, which is why they're covering their private parts with fig leaves. They made themselves clothes. They were naked before and they didn't know. It's like a child, right? Children, like 0 to 5, they'll walk around naked. They don't care. They don't know. It doesn't matter to them. We know that, kids need clothes, but like they don't know. Adam and Eve, walking around naked, have sex with Satan, do not walk around naked any longer. And they learn shame, which anybody who's ever had sex knows it can be a very shameful thing. I'm getting ahead of myself though. Let's keep it in the text, shall we? And they heard the voice of the Lord God walking in the garden and in the cool of the day, and Adam and his wife hid themselves from the presence of the Lord amongst the trees in the garden. Why do you hide yourself? Because you're ashamed. You're embarrassed, right? Got a little ahead of myself, but they knew they had done the wrong thing. They knew they had touched the one thing they weren't supposed to touch. They knew that they had learned of good and evil, because what's the evil thing there besides disobeying the first commandment that God gave to man? They out of wedlock partook in bringing someone else in, right? They were supposed to be a partnership. And going back to Genesis 2, God says it's not good for man to be alone. We need to make him a helpmate. It's supposed to be 2. 2 is company, 3 is a crowd. That's Ben Franklin, but 2 is company, 3 is a crowd. So there's a lot of ways they stepped outside of the relationship with God here because they thought they knew better. And so, and the Lord God called unto Adam and said, where art thou? Obviously he knew. And Adam, of course, does take some level of accountability and says, I heard thy voice in the garden and I was afraid because I was naked and I hid myself. And God said, who told thee that thou was naked? Question. Hast thou eaten of the tree whereof I commanded thee that thou shouldn't eat? Who told you were naked, right? Who told you about it? Who had this conversation with you? Who showed you these things? No apple does this, guys. No drug does this. No anything does this. It's a transfer of knowledge, carnal knowledge, of which Satan had and the others did not. And so, check this out. The man, of course, blames the woman who thou gave to be with me. She gave me of the tree and I did eat. And the Lord God, of course, getting to the bottom of it, said unto the woman, what is that thou hast done? And the woman said, the serpent beguiled me and I did eat, right? Look at all these things that come together. Shame comes with blame. Deceit comes with lies. That's all Satan. He is the father thereof. So the minute Adam and Eve start blaming, start lying, start hiding, start being ashamed, start cheating on each other, right? Those are all the MO of Satan. What apple is making you lie to your creator or blame someone else? The answer is no apple's doing that. No fruit is doing that. No fig is doing that. No pomegranate is doing that. The other thing about the apple, that let's just throw this out there. There are no apples in the Mediterranean, okay? That's not a Mediterranean fruit, but let's not even go there. Because there's no apple anyway. There's no fruit anyway. It's sex. We're talking about sex, period. And I'll tell you again how you will know in just a second. If you're like, wow, Michelina, I don't know what you're thinking, what you're smoking, what you're drinking. There's no way. Wait, hold on. There's more. And so the Lord God puts the first, and the Lord God said unto the serpent, because thou hast done this, you are cursed above the cattle and above every beast of the field. Upon thy belly shalt thou go, and dust shalt thou eat for the rest of all the days of the life. Here it is. And I will put enmity between thee and the woman, and between thy seed and her seed. It shall bruise thy head, and thou shalt bruise his heel. This is the first prophecy of God in the Bible. And what's he saying to Satan? He's saying, I'm going to separate the seed that you have planted in Eve's womb from the seed that Adam has planted in Eve's womb. Now, if anybody knows Genesis 4, Cain and Abel, where do you think they came from? Where did Cain and Abel come from? Cain is the son of Satan. Cain is the seed that God separates from Abel, who is the son of Adam. You're like, well, that can't happen. Oh, really? Go check out the science. Because I'm pretty positive, if you look into it, fraternal twins exist, and women can, in fact, if they have sex with two different dudes very close together, can in fact take two different sperm and it can impregnate the same egg. Like, that's just science. That's not hard. You're like, well, that couldn't have existed back then. Oh, really? Are we so different? Is God any different? Now, again, this is just for my Christians. If you identify as a Christian, you need to know the book. It's that simple. Because what the prophecy is talking about is Christ. And between thy seed and her seed, and it shall bruise thy head. The it that shall bruise thy head is Jesus. Jesus will bruise the head of Satan, which is what he does when he conquers death on the cross, because Satan is death, the father thereof. Right? But thou, Satan, shall bruise Jesus's heel, which is to say, you're going to crucify him. Satan is going to win a battle, but Jesus wins the war, right? And so I won't get into crucifixion right now. If you don't know anything about that, we'll just hold on it. But trust me when I say, God is telling Satan what's going to happen. Because the Bible is a bloodline game, guys. The Bible's all about bloodline, and you can trace, and the Bible does it, actually, when it says this person begat, this person begat, this person begat, this person. It's tracing lineage. It's tracing heritage. And you can trace from Adam to Jesus. It's very specific. And so what ends up happening right from the beginning is that Satan is trying to get in there and muck it up. Okay? And so that is why we can know that there's no other way. Guys, it's just simple logic here. There's no other way to have a child than a sperm and an egg. They didn't have in vitro back then. There's no other way. And you're like, wait a minute. There's no way that Cain is Satan's son. There's no way Eve is having sex with Satan. There's no way Adam had sex with Satan. What? You're crazy. Okay, how do we know? I'm not going to get too much into it right now. But how do we know? Well, what did Cain do to Abel? What did Cain do to Abel? Oh, he murdered him. Well, I don't know. Who do we think is going to condone murder? It's not God. We could talk about Genesis 4. It's not God. God's not condoning murder. It's Satan. Satan is condoning murder. Satan loves dissension. He loves to do whatever he can to kill things because he's a murderer, right? He is a crucifier. And I wanted to just very, very quickly, well, actually, no, I don't really want to go too much into it, but if you want to kind of check into that, you'll see in Genesis 4 that Cain's lineage diverts and separates from Adam's lineage, because Adam goes and has Seth, and then there's a whole lineage that kind of comes from that. And you'll see that there's a diversion here. Cain's lineage, Satan's lineage goes one way, and Adam's lineage goes the other. And then you're like, all right, I don't believe any of that. There's no way. No way. Well, let's just very quickly, in the New Testament, go to the parable of the tares, right? Because Jesus talks about the wheat and the chaff. The wheat being the good workers, and the chaff being, the tares look very similar. You can't tell the difference. I'm getting too far ahead. I'm getting too far ahead. I'm gonna scale it back. Just put it on the shelf for now, guys. For now, just know, if you think there's an apple in Genesis, there's not. And sorry we went a little long on this one. I want to keep them under 10, but that's not even all of Genesis 3, guys. That's just some of Genesis 3. There's still what happens to Adam and Eve. Adam has to till the ground in his sweat, and with Eve, the sorrows of her labor are multiplied, and anybody who's had a child knows that that's certainly the case. And so why would God be so angry about them eating a fruit? He wouldn't. He absolutely wouldn't, right? So that is, I don't know how many illusions I just broke there, and I'm not sorry about it, guys, because you got to know who you are. You got to know where you come from. If you identify as a Christian, you have to know your heritage. You have to know the book. You have to know your lineage. And oh, by the way, you're going to really freak out on this one, but if you are in the lineage of Christ, you can trace your descendancy back to Adam. So this guy is your great, great, great times a million father. So if you don't know what happened in the garden and how you got here, what are we even doing? So, sorry, I'm not sorry. If you like what you see, keep hanging out here. I think I'm just going to keep on bringing it to you because I guess I'm going to.